Administrator Huerta, I wanted to ask you, again, also, I know you've been asked about the tower closure issue, but there's something that I'm struggling with in terms of your criteria of which towers were closed. And let me give you an example in my own state. Warfield in Nashua, New Hampshire, that tower was slated for closure. Now it's been extended to June.
Correct.
We also have an airport in Lebanon, New Hampshire, that has a contract tower, is operated in a contract tower, and it is my understanding that Lebanon has less traffic operations than Nashua. Can you explain to me why one and not the other, and how you distinguish between certain towers, why one was closed and why one wasn't? I will also add, just as a sort of overlay to all this, Lebanon happens to be an airport that receives about $2.3 million in essential air subsidies every year, despite being only 67 or 76 miles, so about an hour and 10 minutes away from our much more larger airport, the Manchester Boston Regional Airport in Manchester, New Hampshire. And so can you help me understand what's the distinction, why close Nashua's tower? I certainly don't want you to close Lebanon's too, but it seems a little arbitrary to me.
Overall, we have two flavors of contract towers. We have the federal contract tower program, and then we have the federal cost share contract tower program. If Lebanon is a federal cost share contract tower program, they have funding that extends through the fiscal year, and we would need to make a decision at that point. I will need to get back to you as to whether Lebanon falls into that category. With respect to Nashua, though, like all the other contract towers, it was a tower that fell below the 150,000 annual operations and 10,000 commercial operations.
Do you have operations that fall below the standard that you just identified that are not contract towers but actually run, the controlling is done by FAA employees?
We do.
So, in fact, I think the initial list proposed for closure would have had about 238 towers under that standard. Is that right?
That would be correct.
So why was the decision made to close all the contracting towers versus the towers that had the FAA employees that perhaps could have gone on to do other work?
It's a question of timing, and that is, we would treat all towers having similar operations the same way. The contract towers enable us to achieve savings because of the contractual nature. In the current fiscal year, it takes longer to close an FAA staff tower.
How much does it cost to run, in terms of the FAA employed tower versus the contract tower, what is more expensive in terms of operations?
I think in general they are comparable, but they depend on how the facility is specifically staffed. Every tower is staffed with positions set up differently.
I would ask for the record for a more detailed analysis of what the cost differential is between those. And was Essential Air Services exempted from the sequestration?
We don't administer Essential Air Services at the FAA. We can get you a response for the record from the department.
So DOT administers it?
DOT administers. It's in the FAA's budget, but it's administered by the department.
So you don't know whether or not that was exempt from sequestration?
I do not.
Okay. I would appreciate an answer to that, because there is over a course, as I understand it, in looking how much is in Essential Air Services, that's a pretty substantial amount of funding on an annual basis, particularly when we're looking at, in fact, we're $218 million on the books to serve 117 communities for Essential Air Services, and yet we're looking for $45 to $50 million to keep the contract towers open. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Okay. Appreciate your getting back to me on that, and also the answer on why Lebanon versus Nashua and the cost differential. Do you expect that we'll have to pay damages in the lawsuits from these communities?
I can't really comment on the outcome of pending litigation.
And if hypothetically we were to pay damages for breach of contract under these communities, it could potentially cost us more than the closures, depending on the level of the damages.
As I said, I can't really comment on pending litigation.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your being here today, and I look forward to the follow-up answers, and thank you all for being here.